Up until now, we've looked at the refractor and the Dobsonian telescope, exploring their strengths and weaknesses, and now it's time to check out another popular telescope type, the Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope. So grab a cup of coffee and let's get the show on the road. I'm Bogdan Damian, and welcome to another deep dive video. The Cassegrain telescope design is named after its inventor, the French mathematician and priest Schmidt-Cassegrain, who designed it in the mid-17th century. Classic Cassegrain telescopes are a type of reflecting telescope, which means they use mirrors to gather and focus light instead of lenses like refracting telescopes. Over the centuries since its invention, the Cassegrain telescope design has been refined and adapted for various purposes, resulting in a few variations of the initial design. Some of the more popular versions are the Schmidt-Cassegrain, the Maksutov-Cassegrain, and the Ricci-Chrétien. There are other variations as well, such as the Dahl-Kirkham or Cassegrain with Mersenne primary. But those are rather considered specialized equipment and are much rarer. Before we dive into specifics of the Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope, I want to give you guys a brief history of how this design came to be. The story of the Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope began in the year 1930 with the invention of the Schmidt camera by the Estonian-German optician Bernard Woldemar Schmidt. A Schmidt camera is a type of telescope for astrophotography that uses a spherical primary mirror in combination with a corrector plate at its center of curvature to eliminate spherical aberrations. 40 years later, in 1970, the optician Tom Johnson, then president of the company Celestron, developed the Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope by combining elements of the Schmidt camera with the Cassegrain telescope. The resulting catadioptric design became one of the most popular Cassegrain telescopes on the market. For those who don't know, a catadioptric telescope combines both lenses, dioptrics, with mirrors, cataoptrics, to gather and focus light. This also means that the Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope, or in short SCT, tries to improve on the pure reflective Cassegrain design by employing a lens in front of the optical tube. Called a corrector plate, this thin, zero-power, optically flat piece of glass is precisely shaped to match the curvature of the primary mirror, allowing it to correct for spherical and chromatic aberrations, two common optical distortions in instruments with spherical mirrors. So how does an SCT work? Well, light enters the telescope tube and passes through the corrector plate. Here the light gets refracted towards the primary mirror. From there, the light is reflected back towards the front of the optical tube, where the smaller secondary mirror is located. The secondary mirror then reflects the light back through a hole in the primary mirror where it exits the optical tube to form the final image. From there, the used accessory, eyepiece or camera sensor takes over. Alright, but why is the SCT so special? Like other Cassegrain telescopes, SCTs have a folded optical path, allowing for a compact and portable design compared to refracting or simple reflecting telescopes of similar aperture. This is ideal when you're looking for a setup that is relatively easy to move around and taken outside to a location with better, darker skies, but one that doesn't sacrifice on focal length, allowing for high magnifications to be reached more easily. I've mentioned a couple of times until now that the corrector plate in front of the optical tube is designed to correct both for spherical and coma aberrations. But what exactly are these? Well, a spherical aberration is a form of optical error that arises when light beams traveling parallel to the optical axis get reflected off a surface that is spherical at different angles. This leads to different focal planes for the various light rays, and the resulting image looks, because of this, blurred and distorted. Coma is a type of spherical aberration resulting from light beams that come in off-axis and hit the mirror before being reflected. In this case, stars near the edge of the field of view present themselves as off-centered or comet-shaped points of light that point inward towards the center of the field of view. Talking about optical errors, the SET also scores really well when it comes to chromatic aberrations or false coloring as well. Because it works by employing mirrors to focus the light onto a single point, it isn't susceptible to this type of imperfections. So all three main light components, red, green and blue, are being focused in the same spot on the optical axis, which is a really great thing. The corrector plate not only corrects the incoming light, but thanks to it being relatively thin when compared to other catadioptric designs, it allows for wider apertures without increasing weight and cost too much. This is why apertures of 10–11 inches are possible without driving prices to astronomical heights. The large apertures combined with the folded optical path allow for these telescopes to be very versatile instruments suitable for a wide range of astronomical applications, including high-power planetary viewing and wide-field deep sky observations as well. Albeit because of the long focal length, the width of the field of view is still restricted when compared to Newtonian reflectors or refractors. This long focal length, however, plays a crucial role in making the SET an excellent instrument for planetary astrophotography. This is because a camera doesn't offer any magnification at all and relies on the focal length of the telescope to get the planet to appear big enough in the field of view. As you all know, the focal length directly influences the magnification. The longer the focal length, the higher the base magnification obtained by simply pairing the camera with a telescope. Add a 2 or 3x Barlow to the mix and you can end up with a 3 or 4 meters of focal length just from an entry-level SET. But why is a higher magnification so important for astrophotography? It's because the higher the magnification, the closer the object will get on the image, and the closer the object is, the more area, thus pixels, of the camera sensor will be occupied by this object. In other words, with magnification, the resolution of the captured object increases, and more details will be visible. Another strength of the SET's design is that thanks to the closed optical tube, it benefits from protection against dust, moisture and other environmental factors. The resulting increased structural rigidity is also a great thing when it comes to collimation stability. All this is why SETs are known to be durable, low-maintenance instruments when compared to traditional reflector designs. But while all of this really does sound great, the SET is not without fault. Let's talk about weaknesses. For example, I already mentioned that the function of the corrector plate is to keep spherical aberrations in check. But the thing is that while this element does a pretty good job in reducing these errors, it won't fully eliminate them. This is why Schmidt-Cassegrain telescopes still suffer from some residual spherical aberrations due to the spherical primary mirror, and this can degrade image quality, especially when observing faint or fine details. While at the subject of optical aberrations, it's worth noting that the Schmidt corrector plate can also introduce field curvature to the system, meaning that in these cases the focal plane is curved rather than flat. This can make it challenging to achieve sharp focus across the entire field of view without the use of a field corrector. This aspect is particularly important for wide-field astrophotography, where you want even the stars at the edge of the field of view to be captured as perfect pinpoints of light. Like all Cassegrain telescopes, SCTs have a secondary mirror that partially obstructs the incoming light. While the obstruction is typically small when compared to Newtonian reflectors, for example, it can still affect contrast and resolution due to diffraction. Diffraction being the optical phenomenon caused by the wave front behind the aperture suffering from distortions due to the wave bending around the edges of the central obstruction caused by the secondary mirror. This effect generally leads to losses in contrast and to the appearance of diffraction spikes. Cooling time is also something to keep in mind when looking at SCTs. Because these telescopes feature sealed optical tubes, they can take some time to reach thermal equilibrium with the surrounding environment. Temperature differences between the internal and external components can lead to an overall reduction of image quality. This is why it is recommended to let your telescope, no matter the type, reach thermal equilibrium before doing any serious observations. One last thing I want to mention is the cost. Schmidt-Cassegrain telescopes are more complex than other designs and require a greater precision during manufacturing. This is why they can be relatively expensive when compared to Newtonian reflectors, for example. But luckily, you don't have to go and spend a ton of money on the biggest SCT out there just to make use of its advantages. Here are some recommendations. You can start small with an affordable 5 or 6 inch model like the Nexar 5 SE from Celestron. While the 127 mm of aperture might not sound that much, it is still a great instrument, especially if you are only just starting with astronomy. If you already have a mount, then a C5 like this one will be just great to get you started. If you are more experienced and know exactly what type of observations you want to do, then you could check out the C8 OTA from Celestron and maybe pair it with a go-to EQ mount to allow for longer astrophotography sessions as well. At 8 inches or 200 mm of aperture, this telescope is still portable enough to be taken to a remote location with better skies without too much of a hassle. Now, if you are a seasoned astronomer and money is no issue, you could go really big and get a C14 OTA and pair it with a beefy EQ mount with go-to capabilities. While the size and weight might make it a stationary telescope for your backyard rather than one for travels, the 14 inches of aperture combined with a focal length of almost 4 meters will give you an excellent flexibility both for visual and astrophotography applications. So this is all well and good, but why get an SCT over a Newtonian reflector or a decent refractor? Well, the SCT, thanks to its design, represents a very good compromise between the other two options. It is more compact and robust than a Newtonian reflector, while being available in similar aperture sizes. It is significantly more expensive though, this is true, but the image quality is arguably better thanks to the corrector plate, and all of this makes it a great option both for planetary and DSO observations, as well as for astrophotography applications. If your focus is wide-field visual observations of DSOs, then a Newtonian reflector would be the better option though. Compared to a good ED doublet or triplet Apo refractor, the image quality of the SCT won't be able to quite keep up in terms of contrast, brightness and sharpness. Alright, so a refractor is the better option then, right? It's not so simple. While image quality in general might be marginally better through a refractor, it will however be susceptible to chromatic aberrations, something the SCT simply doesn't suffer from. A refractor will also feature a smaller aperture if we were to look at similar price categories, and this will limit its light gathering capabilities. In addition, because of the typically shorter focal length, the refractor will reach higher magnifications only with the help of very short focal length eyepieces, which in turn can lead to a completely different set of challenges. What I'm trying to say is that depending on the application it is intended for, every telescope type has its strengths and weaknesses. There is no perfect telescope design, which is why I think it's that more important to think about what you want to use the telescope for before buying one. All this being said, in my opinion, the SET is a great instrument for observing the night sky, both with your own eyes and with a camera attached as well. While it certainly does have some flaws, it manages to do a lot of things right, making it an excellent all-rounder telescope for beginners and seasoned astronomers alike. Anyway, that's been it for now. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think about Schmidt-Cassegrain telescopes in the comments below. Do you agree with me or do you see things differently? I'm very interested in reading your opinions. Thanks for watching and catch you guys in the next one.